All right, continuing on and really wrapping up the idea about having better families. We talked about the fact that parents, setting examples, and then we were looking at parents training their children, and it's their responsibility to train their children. Parents are given that charge. It's not to be put off onto other people. It's not to be given to the aunts, uncles, even to grandparents to train our children. It's our duty and our responsibility. But we come to question number 4 on that question sheet, and we want to notice Proverbs chapter 6. Proverbs 6, I believe we had read this portion last week. In Proverbs chapter 6, let's go ahead and read again verses 20 through 23. Who will grab that for us? Proverbs 6, 20 to 23. John.
My son, keep your father's commandment, forsake not your mother's teaching. Bind them on your heart always, tie them around your neck. When you walk, they will lead you. When you lie down, they will watch over you. And when you awake, they will talk with you. For the commandment is a lamp and a teaching and a light, and the reproofs of discipline are a way of life.
Okay. So the question was, what does God require of children relative to parents? So there's responsibilities of parents, but then what about for the children? Okay, obedience. Respect. Any other thoughts there? Anybody have New Testament passages that address this issue?
Ephesians 6:1.
Ephesians 6:1, which says what, Nancy?
Children obey your parents in the Lord.
Okay. Children, obey your parents in the Lord. The last part? For this is right. What's that telling us? For this is right.
It's the correct thing to do. It's what God expects to be done. It's the right thing to do.
Yes, it's the right thing. It's what God. It pleases God. It pleases God when the children are obedient to the parents. And okay, I know it's addressed to children, but would this be addressed, for instance, to Daniel or to Hayes? Okay, so am I going to sit Daniel and Hayes down? All right, little buddy. Right here it says you need to listen to mom and you need to eat that broccoli that's just so nasty looking. Right?
It's addressed to those who are understanding that has the word developed mind.
Zach?
Except I do that already. For there's enough that Daniel at this stage understands to use your example.
Okay.
But maybe certain things.
Does he comprehend, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right? Or does he just know, I got to listen to Dad, because otherwise there's a negative consequence? Okay. We start with that, and yes, we can begin to tell them these things, but they don't comprehend this until later on. And he's addressing those who are old enough to hear this, to understand it, to have some concept about the Lord, about I want to please God, I want to do things that are right. So this is to not just, sometimes I think maybe we confine this to little children listening to mom and dad, which they need to do. But this goes for those who are older as well. Those who are in their teenage years, maybe even in their early 20s. They need to listen, they need to hear, they need to respect their parents and the position God has put them in to help to guide them in life and to do what is right. Any other thoughts there?
You were pointing about
Nancy, then.
Well, in training children, you want to be teaching them what you expect to see. Just don't expect to see it immediately. But you're instilling. I had a pediatrician tell me, start doing now what you want to see 6 months from now with the toddler.
Okay.
But you keep reinforcing, this is what I want, this is what I want. And in 6 months, they'll be doing that. But you're also starting on another, this is what I want. You know? So it's perpetual. And that's the way it works with children. Yes, you know, Daniel hears that, but that doesn't necessarily mean he comprehends that. And the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, and that's how parenting works too.
Yes, the fear of the mother is the beginning of knowledge. Yes, I get that. Rick?
Just in line with that, train up your children in the way they should go. You're starting them out at the earliest age. You're training them to think and to embed this into their brain so that they understand it.
Yes.
It's kind of on the line of what Nancy's saying. You have to start early, work hard at it.
Well, and
It's not, you can't just read this verse to them and say, okay, this is what it is.
we got it down.
Right.
But, and that's true for all of us. As we are learning something, it takes time to develop that over time. So we realize this is an ongoing process, the children learning it, but there comes a point where they begin to comprehend, okay, it's something bigger than I just have to listen to mom and dad. I have to respect God and therefore listen to mom and dad. Because God is always the primary relationship. No matter where we are in life, who we're interacting with, the primary thought needs to be, I'm going to please God in this, whatever that is. In Romans chapter 1, remember verses 28 down to the end of the chapter there, 28 to 32, he gives this big list of various sins. And let's just go ahead and read that. Romans 1, 28 to 32. Who will read that for us? Ron.
And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a debased mind, to do those things which are not fitting, being filled with all unrighteousness, sexual immorality, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, evil-mindedness. They are whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, violent, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, undiscerning, untrustworthy, unloving, unforgiving, unmerciful, who, knowing the righteous judgment of God, that those who practice such things are deserving of death, not only do the same, but also approve of those who practice them.
There's a similar type of list in 2 Timothy chapter 3, but what just stands out to me, he's listing all these things, including murder and haters of God, and then he mentions in verse 30, disobedient to parents. There's no distinction in the Bible between a murderer and someone who's disobedient to parents. What does that tell you about God's view of children that are disobedient?
You got to think back to the Old Testament when we talk about the children who were disobedient to them, extremely disobedient then, they could be stoned to death.
Okay.
So,
Yes, exactly. You can go back and see through history where God took a very dim view of those who were disobedient to parents, to the point of when they wouldn't listen. In Deuteronomy chapter 21, they come and bring their son before the elders and say he's a drunkard and a glutton, and he won't listen to us. Stone him. That was the penalty for that. So, yeah, God takes a very dim view.
just a point, the idea of being a drunkard or a glutton indicates that he was an older child.
Yes.
Not an infant, not a
Right.
young, innocent child. He was somebody that understood what he should have just did.
Exactly right. let's pop back to Ephesians chapter 6. Ephesians chapter 6. Because right after he says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right, he quotes the Old Testament, honor your father and mother. Then he says, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with you and you may live long on the earth. So there's negative consequences to disobedience and positive ones to obedience. And how would you reword or how would you describe the positive consequence to listening to, honoring, respecting your parents? What does he tell us there? Verse 3.
Be well with you.
How would it be well with you?
Everything, if you're obedient to your parents, pretty much everything's going to work out a lot better for you.
Why is it going to work out a lot better for you in the end if you listen to your parents? Okay.
It's a commandment of God.
It is a commandment of God. I'll just freely confess, I was one of the world's biggest idiots when it came to listening to my parents. I thought they were stupid, didn't know what they were talking about. They're old, they're dumb, they don't get it. And I wish I'd listened to my father and my mother, but particularly my father a whole lot more in my teenage years and my 20s. Things would have gone better, right? But I was puffed up, thought I knew better. Things just go better for you. Why? Things go better because, as Bonnie said, been there, done that. They can tell you, hey, this is a pitfall here. Don't go down that road. That's not a smart thing to do. Well, I want to go work here. I want to hang out with these friends. I want to go to this thing, this event, this concert. Wait a second. Not too smart there, because here's the issues that I see. And young people just think, well, they're just old and they don't get it. Young people need to understand, we were young at one time, and we went through some of these things, varying degrees, and just through the years of either our experience or observation in the lives of others, there's things we can see that you can't see, and things that we may not be able to put our finger on 100%, but just that little sixth sense is like, I don't think so. I don't like the way that sounds or the way that it looks. So it will go well with you, it will go better with you, and it says that you may live long on the earth. There have been plenty of young people who haven't listened to their parents and literally have ended up dead because of it. They go out, they get drunk, they go out, they're speeding in their car, they lose control, they're with the wrong people, wrong place, wrong time, and that's it for them. And so literally it can lead to extending your life, not only in your youth, but as you get older and you've listened to your parents through the years and you develop those good habits and practices in your life, it will help out. Mike?
I think, whenever we're younger, especially, learning independence, and there's a lot of stuff that we haven't seen and we think it's brand new. But as you get older, you kind of see the world kind of works in cycles, and you just kind of go, I've seen this before.
What does Ecclesiastes say?
Nothing new under the sun.
Nothing new.
Nothing new under the sun. And whenever it is new to us, we think that nobody else has actually seen that before. But, and I think it's been pointed out before whenever we study Ecclesiastes that, you listen to the music of your time, but it's all repackaged, is all it is. And it's repackaged to, for a new generation, but it's always kind of comes right back to where it used to be. And, I think that, whenever we are younger, and I see this in the boys. It's hard for them to be able to say that my parents have done this before, but as you get older, you kind of start seeing the repetition of life.
Right. You can look at it and instantly know that is not good.
And a
Yeah.
lot of these things, we find in the scriptures, and you're talking about something that's 2,000 years old, and we're
Yeah.
still talking about it today.
Exactly. Now, I do want to make the point that in verse 4, he follows up with, and you fathers do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and admonition of the Lord. We have to take care not to provoke our children to wrath, which can be done through hypocrisy, inconsistency, things like that. This is not an issue of your children get angry because you have strict rules. That's not what he's talking about here. Children almost always are going to look at mom and dad's rules as that's strict. Well, my friends aren't like that. They don't have to be home at 10 o'clock. They can stay out till midnight. That was one of my dad's biggest things. Always have to be home by midnight. And man, did I ever push that. I never did anything good after midnight. Ever. In my youth. I'll qualify that. That when I was in my rebellious state, he was exactly right. There's really not anything out there that you need to be doing. So that was his rule. I didn't like it. But this is not talking about, your parents have rules that you don't like and you get upset about it. It's being arbitrary, hypocritical, inconsistent, things like that, that cause and provoke wrath in children. So parents have a responsibility on this of teaching, training their children, but the children need to recognize their responsibility to God to respect, honor, obey their parents. Any other thoughts? Zach?
I've heard it explained before that provoking them to wrath can also happen when you don't control your own wrath. Whether it's a comment you make or the form of your discipline, if that's done out of anger, not out of love, that will easily provoke them to wrath. And it's hard sometimes to temper yourself before you discipline so that you're not disciplining in anger, because that doesn't usually lead to anything good.
Right. Chris?
I was just going to say, in Colossians 3:21 is saying the same thing, but fathers do not provoke your children unless they become discouraged. Brings their wrath is discouraged.
Yes, it can bring about discouragement as well as wrath. Exactly right. All right, question number 5 I had asked, think of some Bible families and note both good and bad qualities. Anybody have a Bible family for us that we want to discuss for just a moment? We'll just touch on these. Bible families. How about Isaac and Rebekah? Who were their 2 sons? Jacob and Esau. What was the good in the family? What was the bad? Most of you are probably thinking, what good was there? I'll just say this. Isaac was a godly man. He believed in Jehovah. He had one wife, right, as opposed to his father and his son. But what was their problem? What's the thing they're most known for?
Well, they showed favoritism toward their children. Rachel loved Jacob and Isaac loved Esau.
And what did that lead to?
Jealousy between the boys and enmity for each other.
Exactly right. Some parents are thinking, how could you favor one child over another? Some people have lived in homes where that is absolutely the case. That absolutely happens. And it causes issues of different kinds. Any other families?
Well, David's family, whereas one son was a rapist, one son tried to take his throne, another son, Solomon had his own problems with his wives and his idolatry and different things. Some of David's mistakes that he made in his life led to these things that happened to his family.
Okay, yeah. I've got down, Absalom. Amnon was the rapist, raped his half-sister Tamar. And Absalom, the other son involved in all of that unfolded, he was arrogant and rebellious, and he ended up in what condition? Because of that arrogance and rebellion. Got his hair tangled up in the branches, and Joab was like, I don't care what David said, skewered him, right? That's why that's a fairly common outcome to young people that are arrogant, think they're smarter, more powerful, more well-liked, and better than other people. They get slapped down really hard in life at times. How about Dinah? Does anybody remember Dinah? From Genesis 34? What happened to her? Go back sometime and read that account. It says she went out to be with the daughters of the land. She ended up getting raped. It's just, to me, that's a cautionary tale about parents. You need to know where your children are and who they're with. Because she was innocent in going out there. She was just with the wrong crowd. That's the way I understand that account there. So there's a lot of different ones in the Bible. I think of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Do you think they had good parents? When they go over to the kingdom of Babylon and all that pressure is put on them, first of all, along with Daniel, to conform to their idolatrous ways, and they resist, like, no, we need to have a different diet, and stood up against that, and then they stand up against the idolatry that's there. They were raised right. They had good principles instilled in them, and they stood strong, even to the point we'd rather die. Right?
Yeah, I think of Eli and his two sons. Whenever you have a priest, his sons are just out of control.
Yeah.
Would be out of control. So, just being a member of the church is not necessarily anything for your children.
Exactly. And who stood in contrast to those two? Samuel. Samuel's mother was who? Hannah. Yeah. His mother did right in getting him to the point of being weaned, and then he was with Eli and being raised there. But she continued to have an influence in his life as she would come and see him every year. So she had dedicated her son to God, and that turned out well. So just thinking about the fact that society is not going to help us have better families. It's going against better families. And we need to be looking into the Word of God as parents, as husbands, wives, as children. What is it that God says? What's the instruction He gives us that we can be better? Because we want to be better. We want to have a good family, loving relationships, be there for each other, to help each other through difficulties and trials, and to enjoy good things in life together as well. All right, let's jump to the next lesson then, please. Better marriages. Better marriages. Let's begin by reading Hebrews 13, verse 4, please. Hebrews 13, verse 4. Who'll grab that for us? Rick.
Marriage is honorable among all, and the bed undefiled, but the fornicators and adulterers God will save.
Okay. So, the Bible talks about that marriage is honorable among all. Now, he has specific reference, of course, to the marriage bed there, but that concept that marriage is honorable, we've already looked at the fact that God's the one who established marriage. He made Adam, He made Eve, He brought them together as husband and wife, and we'll talk more about that, Lord willing, here in just a little bit. But He established that. He established that for good. It's an honorable institution that He has made, and we want to do the very best we can participating in that institution. Those who are husbands and wives, those who will be one day husbands and wives, need to have the proper view of it so that they may be pleasing to God and so that their marriages will be the best that they can absolutely be. Question number 1, I asked you to read 1 Corinthians 13, verses 4 to 8. Pick 2 or 3 qualities of love, define and describe them. So let's just take these in order, and if you hit on one of these, then speak up and say that's the one that I picked, and these are my thoughts on it. So, 1 Corinthians 13, verse 4, to begin with, love suffers long. What does it mean to suffer long? Who's got something on that? Anybody? What is suffering long?
It has to do with enduring hardships or difficulties when somebody's done you wrong. That's how the Lord is with us, and that's how we need to be with other people, and we can specifically apply that to our spouses.
Okay, yeah, just so I jumped straight into it, but we know this isn't addressing the marriage relationship, right? It's addressing the relationship actually among brethren, dealing with one another as brethren. But if these principles are good for our relationships with brethren, we understand that these qualities are also good in that marriage relationship. So yes, that idea of suffering long, being patient with people. It says there that love is kind. What is it to be kind? And we talk about just be kind, right? But what does that mean? To be kind. What it means to be nice? What does that mean?
Be serviceable. Be serviceable.
Serviceable.
To do a good service to others. So it's an action.
Okay, yes. These things are actions, exactly right. Being gracious, considerate. What can I do for this person? How can I be good to them? How can I help them out? Being kind, being a gracious and considerate person. Love does not envy.
Envy is here defined as the feeling of displeasure produced by witnessing or hearing of the advantage or prosperity of others.
Oh, a spouse would never be envious of their spouse, right? Why would one spouse be envious of another spouse? Nobody's willing to say. Nancy?
Well, because one spouse is out of the home enjoying something, either social or even business, and the other spouse is home with the children, it could go either way.
Okay.
And so they envy that free time, that enjoyable time that the other person gets. I've
Right.
actually heard this in some of the counseling we've done before, and it is remarkable how envious.
They are displeased at the advantage they see the other one has. Well, you get to get out of the home every day. You get to get away from the children. You get to talk to adults all day. You don't have to deal with dirty diapers. And on and on and on. And what's the spouse at work sometimes looking at?
You get to stay at home all day.
You get to stay at home all day. You don't have to get up and get ready. You get to see the kids growing up. You get to see the first steps, hear the first words. I got to go and deal with a cranky boss and unsatisfied customers and all this pressure and deadlines that are impossible. Spouses do get envious of each other.
Exactly, it all screams me, me, me.
Exactly. Love does not do that. Right? Love does not parade itself. What is it to parade yourself? And very closely associated to the next one is not puffed up.
NASB says it does not brag. I'm talking just about me and my accomplishments. How much better I am because I can do it.
Yeah. Look at all the awards I've gotten at work. How many do you have being here at home? Well, none, because you haven't given me any, honey. Right?
That's like a little bit of envy.
Yes, it can. So it's dealing with that idea of arrogance and conceit and self-importance. It's not parading itself. It's not puffed up. Doesn't have that superiority complex. Does not behave rudely. What is that? Do we recognize it? You know, we like watching period pieces, 1800s. Usually it's set in Great Britain and stuff. And those people are incredibly polite. And it's like, why can't we be like that? We're just these crude Americans, right, in the 21st century. Unmannerly. Being rude is being unmannerly, discourteous, impolite, vulgar. So love doesn't do that. Love does not seek its own. That's an easy one. Come on, somebody give it to me. What is it? Does not seek its own. Not selfish. Not self-centered. Is not provoked. What is that?
Doesn't react harshly.
Okay, doesn't react harshly, quickly. Rick?
Anger. Not anger. Not allowing your anger. In other words, be angry but don't sin.
Okay.
Be angry in those situations just as long as you're not sinful in your actions.
You can be upset about something,
Right. Anything.
but you're not temperamental, not hot-headed.
Right.
You know, some people wear their feelings on their sleeve. Just every little thing that bothers them, they let you know it. It's just written all over them. They react all the time. Love is not provoked. Love thinks no evil. What is that?
My text has a footnote that says, keeps no accounts of evil. You know, we would say that we give people the benefit of the doubt, or we think favorably, towards that person, rather than immediately drawing an unfavorable conclusion about something they say, something they do, maybe their absence.
Okay. Glad the camera's pointed this way when I say this. Doesn't dwell on wrongs. I'm sure no one here has ever had a disagreement with a spouse where one or the other is like, well, you know what you did. You know back there. You know last week. You know for the past 6 months. Just bring up all these things that happened that you've been upset about. You just pull all of it up, package it together, and bam, right between the eyes to win the argument. Mike?
Yeah, and I'll say this, and I'm very guilty of it. Not everybody in the family is where we argue, but we use those terms always and never. Like you never do this, and you always do that. And I try to catch myself, but
it's one of those things I've seen a lot of. It comes into it because all that good is wiped out, and there's just that tunnel vision on, here's the wrong that I'm really upset about, right? So exactly right. So thinks no evil, as Ron was saying, putting the interpretation on the action or the lack of action and just thinking, that's bad. They're out to get me. They're hurting me here. Does not rejoice in iniquity. What is that?
In this context of a marriage conversation, it could possibly mean if your spouse is saying or acting in a way that isn't really fitting of a Christian, you don't necessarily go along with that and laugh at it or give that approval in your reaction. You kind of stick to the principles of Scripture and kind of hold them accountable spiritually.
Yeah, you can do that, and you don't want to be glad about their faults or their failings. You know, sometimes we wonder, how could one spouse be glad about the other one's sin? But sometimes it could be, see, I knew you were that way. I'm so glad you did that because it proves me right. And it doesn't draw attention to them. It doesn't highlight them. You know, there are times when either a husband or a wife will be around others, and one of them just seems to make sport of their spouse and all the little failings and faults that they can point out to other people about that spouse. It's their way of needling them in public around other people when they really can't respond to it. It's just, It doesn't rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in what? Rejoices in truth. What is that about? Anybody? You're happy that your spouse is a Christian. You're happy about them doing something right. You see the good in the other. You compliment them. You praise them for it. You encourage them in that. So you rejoice in that truth. It says, love bears all things. That's similar to what we mentioned a while ago, but anybody have thoughts on that? Bears all things?
Become selfless. You don't begrudge. You don't get puffed up. You don't behave brutally. You bear it to the point of, we'll get through this and work it out without being selfish.
Get through what?
Any problem.
Okay, problems, trials, heartache, pain. Maybe we pause for a second. For those who are or have been married, is marriage a challenge? Okay. Say yes. Okay. I should see universal. You're talking about two people, two independent minds, two personalities, two different backgrounds. Even though they may be similar backgrounds, they're still different backgrounds, different likes and dislikes, and different levels of maturity and understanding and knowledge and everything else. You're trying to blend those together. That's a challenge. And the intimacy of the relationship, the closeness of that relationship, brings in certain stresses and pressures that you don't have with others. I mean, people at work, I go home at the end of the day. Sometimes we may carry that home with us, but I don't have to sleep next to them. I don't have to be in the same room. I'm not going to be with them all weekend, go on vacation with them, or see their family and have to deal with that nutty mother. I don't have to do that. Family, marriage, you got them. And you got to work out those differences, those challenges. And sometimes that nutty mother may come to live with you. You bear all things. Okay, there's things we got to deal with here. There are problems. Because I am married to this other person, there are problems, challenges I have to deal with in life. If they have a sibling that has mental issues, that's now a part of my life. I got to deal with that. There's health problems, other things going on. It's a part of my life now. I have to bear through these things. I have to deal with them. Nancy and John.
What we've said different times is we didn't marry you.
You marry a family.
You marry someone else.
You.
And you want everything to be just like you.
Okay,
But
I get you.
didn't marry you. You married someone else. You didn't marry him.
You married another human being.
That's right. So you're going to have to learn how that works. You didn't marry you.
They're not going to agree with you, and you just need to get over it sometimes. Just,
There are differences.
they're not going to be on the same page sometimes. They're not going to like blue. Hey, I don't like those blue curtains. What do you mean you don't like those blue curtains, you know? Sometimes that happens. John?
Well, when it says that love bears all things, that word bear is the same word stego with stegosaurus. If you know what a stegosaurus is, it's a dinosaur that had armor plating. Well, love armor plates a relationship, a marriage in this case, what you're talking about. But love's going to fortify the marriage and keep outside influences. It's going to create a border to protect. It's going to create a border to keep things inside as well. You're not going to take things in the marriage and take them outside of the marriage that don't belong outside, and you're not going to allow things outside to come in. Love is going to create that boundary and eliminate the possibility of things contaminating the marriage. And that's the way we need to think of that. That bearing is armoring and protecting. That's what love does. If we have a Christ-like love where we put the other person first and we do anything for them, even including dying for that person, that's the love that we're to have for our spouse.
Right, well put, Chris.
In 1 Peter 4:8, and above all things, have fervent love for one another, for love will cover a multitude of sins.
Exactly. Exactly right. Love believes all things. What does it mean to believe all things? Does that mean gullible?
Well, it kind of goes back to what we talked about before. We're not going to automatically assume evil. We're going to believe the best about the situation until we find out differently, but we're not going to automatically go down the evil.
Right.
We're going to have the best, the hope for the best, believe the best until...
You have confidence in the one you love. There's not the idle suspicion, the doubt, the mistrust, all of that that's going on there. You have a confidence in them, and you think well of them. Hopes all things. Sort of what we were just touching on.
Yeah, hope is a favorable expectation. We don't hope for bad things unless we have a mental issue.
Right.
We hope for things that are favorable.
Right.
So in our relationship, that's what we should believe in and hope, and then work to achieve those things.
Yes. Yes, exactly right. Anticipating good in that relationship and from them. And then endures all things. We talked about bear up under difficult circumstances, things like that. Love never fails. How about that one?
True love never fails.
Okay.
That's what I think of when I do that. It's, if you understand what real love is, it's doing all these things in these previous passages. It will not fail.
Okay.
You know, if you actually love somebody, you're going to give all and above all to them, not withhold it because of yourself. You're going to honestly do more for them than you do.
Yeah, you're willing
Right.
to stick it out. Yeah, it survives good and bad. And we know in Scripture there, and we'll talk about this, but you know, there's a time when a marriage is dissolved, a maid has committed adultery, you put them away, you find a maid who's going to respect those vows, things like that. But what we're talking about here is you go through those stresses, through those trials. There are a lot of marriages you see in the world around you they break apart through those trials. Love's not going to let that happen. You know, we know a couple in Kentucky that they lost their son. Was he 6 or 7 years old? 7 years old to brain cancer. You want to talk about stress in a marriage? That was stress of marriage. But they stuck it out. They put their faith in God. They had hard times. They have hard times with their daughter now, who is the older sister of this boy. She's got her own challenges. In the wife's family, there's a history of mental illness, and that is a factor in all these things. They've been through some really difficult times, but their love for each other and their love and devotion to God, they've carried on. That love hasn't failed. Mike, you have something?
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, he talks about everything that love is. This description of it, this is what it looks like. And the result of that definition is it will not fail. Just as you described about the couple, obviously those things, what they saw as love, was patient, it was kind, it was not jealous, and you could just go down. That's why it did not fail them at the time.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts there? All right, with a couple minutes we have left, I want to hit on a couple of other passages that have the biblical concept of love in them. Proverbs 17:17. We'll just hit these off one at a time. Proverbs 17:17. Who will read that for us? Now again, these aren't specific to marriage, but just love. What does love look like, Mike?
A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity.
Okay, we should be friends with our spouse. So a friend loves at all times, right? You're going to love. Even when there are those disagreements, there's those difficulties, you still love them, though you may be upset, you may be displeased, things like that. You still have to have that love that says, I'm going to do my best to work through this and to serve them well. What does Matthew 6:24 say? Matthew 6:24.
No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and him.
Okay. You can have one love. Does that apply to marriage? You got one love. That's it. Not two. Can't do that. You got to have one. Only one. John 3:16. Somebody's got that memorized, I know. Right?
God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that he should believe.
Yep.
That he who should believe will have everlasting life.
Yeah, should not perish but have everlasting life. What's the quality of love there? What did he do? God so loved the world that he sacrificed and gave his Son. Love is sacrificial. How about Galatians 2:20?
I've been crucified with Christ, and no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself up for me.
What's the quality of love there? Yeah, I've got a lot of others here, but I'm just skipping to the sacrifice. Love is sacrificial. Again and again, the Bible emphasizes love is sacrificial. We have to set ourselves aside and do what's best for the other person. That's what love is. All right, so Lord willing, we're going to pick up, maybe touch on a couple more of these that are scattered throughout the Bible, but then we'll press on in better marriages. Go ahead, if you would, do the one on picking a partner. We may get to that, we may not next week. But let's come back and be prepared to study some more. Thank you all.